go.
Killer. You look marvelous. Right on. Good morning, Zach. Thanks for joining us. We're here with Jamie Lynn in Britain. I'm up here in NorCal. Where are you?
Temecula, California.
Right on. Are you going to Intense's open house?
No, I'm down here. I'm currently working with KTM North America, motorcycle company, KTM Husqvarna Gas.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm in Temecula.
What are you doing for KTM?
Anything and everything I can. We just signed Eli Tomac for the 2026 season. So
Okay. Yep.
I'm running around like a Tomac cheerleader, just trying to tell everybody all about John Tomac and, the fact that Eli comes. I mean, everybody, the motocross people know Eli, but they don't, I'm just super fan for the Tomac family. So that's kind of one of my own self-described roles right now.
Yeah.
But I work in the media department. So everything from building motorcycles to riding motorcycles. And just doing anything and everything I can. To help out.
Yeah, I don't know anything about motocross, so I'm hoping you can educate me. I would love to ride motocross, but I think I'd kill myself because, on a bike, I've about killed myself and add 80 horsepower, and I think I'd be dead.
I did Anaheim one year and for the Supercross and Las Vegas for the Sam Boyd Stadium.
Oh yeah,
but both of those were pretty epic experiences. Something totally different.
Yeah, and here in Southern California, because Anaheim opens the season each year, and it has done so for decades. But there's always been it's with the mountain bike motocross crossover, which I've always been a proponent from since I started a mountain bike action in 1986, because we were motocross people. There's whether it's Lopes and PD. I mean, there's always over the years so many mountain bikers. Sean Palmer, of course, raced in the Coliseum one year. So there's a great crossover in the Southern California market down here between the mountain bikers and the motocross guys.
It's insane how most motocross guys can just get on a mountain bike as well and just kill most people out there on the trails. It's just that skill level crossover is just insane.
Yeah, it used to be, of course, just downhill, but now, all these guys, the top pro motocross guys, countless miles on the road bikes, especially. And so their fitness, whereas before it used to just be handling skills. Now these guys are really well-rounded. Alden Baker, who was a former Northern National rider on the Maxxis team back in the 90s, he started a training compound in Florida. And so, from Ricky Carmichael to James Stewart, all these top guys have all gone through the Alden Baker farm. It's called the Baker Factory. And so he's been the guy who's almost single-handedly has really transformed the motocross professional racing community into these really fit bike riders.
Nice.
So, dude, did you grow up in Southern California?
Born about a few hundred yards underneath the Hollywood sign. Yes, sir.
Really? Right.
Yeah, it was bitching. We had BMX tracks, we had motocross. Literally within a stone's throw from a Hollywood sign, we had 2 motocross tracks. Back then I was on a mini bike, but the older boys in the canyon all had motorcycles, and and then of course it was just great. And so as the housing development slowly came in, we'd have all these empty lots, and we just made BMX tracks up there and riding the motorcycles. So but born and raised Hollywood, went to Hollywood High. And then dropped out of Hollywood High to become a motorcycle racer, and that never really went anywhere. So that was it. But Hollywood, California.
That's something you don't see nearly as much anymore, is kids just building jumps wherever they can. I'm up here in Northern California. I lived. Do you know Walnut Creek?
Yeah.
So, back in the day, there was just jumps in every open lot, kids building. And if they aren't jumping on BMX, they're skateboarding. I don't know what kids are doing anymore, but you don't see that anymore.
Well, actually, I'd say to be just the opposite. I every time I get on social, I see some new jump track somewhere, and what they're doing, especially up in, in Canada and BC with those, those wood trails. Elevated 80 feet in the air on this little piece of 2x4 practically. And then just, I don't know where they do it, but even at the Rampage, I marvel as much at the tricks, but just the course building skills of these kids is amazing. I'm really intrigued by that, how to figure out the physics of how much of a lip and everything, and just manhandling that much dirt. It's impressive.
Yeah. So, dude, give us for the people that maybe don't know who Zapata Espinoza is, give us a little bit of a elevator pitch, who you are, what you've done, what you're about.
I got hired in October 1986 at Mountain Bike Action magazine. And it was one of like 5 magazines in America at the time that did mountain bikes. And then we became pretty notorious soon, because again, we were motorcycle guys. So we were coming into it and riding the bikes hard. So within the industry, we kind of got a bad name because we were, we weren't abusing bikes, but we were riding mountain bikes as mountain bikes could be ridden. Not necessarily should be, but could be.
Yeah.
And that was like a real gap literally in the industry back then, is that people would make, because everybody was jumping on this mountain bike bandwagon and no one really knew what it was or anything about it. And then we had John Tomac living in Simi Valley, which is just over the hill from our office. And we would have John Tomac. So and he would be testing bikes for us. And Tomac, coming out of the BMX world, was just, high flying Johnny T. And that was kind of a joke in the industry too, because people started calling us Tomac Bike Action because we would put him on the cover, because it was so, it was so sensational to have this picture of Johnny T just like getting this massive air on a mountain bike, this Univega Alpina, like this janky steel mountain bike back in 1986. And we have pictures of him, with the toe clips and his Bell V1 Pro helmet on, and so Mountain Bike Action really did. It became like, I don't mean to be sacrilegious about it, but people called it the Bible of the sport, because we became so popular and so famous, and for some people infamous. But as a result of us being motorcycle guys, when suspension with Mert Lawwill, Robert Reisinger, Rock Shocks, of course, Doug Briarberry, Manitou, they knew us as the motorcycle guys because they'd all been, we're all motorcycle people. So it was a boon to Mountain Bike Action, because in the late 80s, early 90s, all the suspension, disc brakes, all that moto-inspired technology came to us first. So we were able to just, by virtue of us being our history as moto guys, we were able to break stories and technology information that no one else even had a clue about.
It was always a thing whenever I came to the States, you pick up Mountain Bike Action because it was wildly different to any of the magazines we got back here in the UK.
Yeah.
And just some of the stuff in there, you just never saw it. It was way months ahead of what we would get here.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a big thing. And then in 1993, I got hired away by Bicycling Magazine. They tried to hire me in 1991 and I said no. But in 93, I said yes, because it was a little bit stifling at Mountain Bike Action for a few, cultural reasons and editorial reasons and stuff. And at Rodale, who did Bicycling, which was an East Coast magazine, they had their own mountain bike magazine, which pretty much was this off the back janky magazine, because it was these East Coast guys who were just, it was like East Coast journalism versus West Coast journalism. And back there, it was just, camping and just a bunch of silly things, really, I think. And so I made the transition over, and we ended up making Mountain Bike Magazine the number one selling magazine. And, I remember the phone call. I called Paul Turner when I made the deal. I said, hey, Paul, because I was really good friends with him back then. I said, hey, I just got hired by Rodale to do a new mountain bike magazine. And first words out of his mouth is, well, I guess we'll have to start advertising in that magazine. And that was really, as much as I did have a degree of, I say, small C celebrity in the industry. And, that was the kind of thing that Rodale was looking for. Just a person like myself who worked really hard, knew a lot of stuff going on, and could bring some, because their magazine had no ads. Mountain Bike Action, those guys it was like just millions of dollars. GT would put a 16-page catalog on their KHS catalog. And here's Rodale, Bicycling Magazine was this big magazine, general interest bicycling magazine, but they were getting, with the mountain bike market, they were just completely outside the realm. So, but my connections and with Dan Capel, another friend of mine out here, we started the magazine, and just being in Southern California around Brian Lopes and doing stories with guys that were relevant versus just these obscure trail riding stories in Mongolia, which are good, but at the time just were of no advertising value or consumer value at all. We wanted, the mountain bike thing, it was meteoric, the craziness of mountain bikes from the 90s on, especially after the Worlds in 1990. It was just throw money at the wall and just start developing and thinking and designing. And of course, the racing was a big thing. And I've always been, first and foremost, a racing fan, which, again, on the East Coast, those guys just did not get the racing thing at all. So I was there for 10 years, real quickly, wrap it up. And then I got fired from there because I was pushing back against one of these thinking suit and tie guys they had back there. And and went to work for Trek for a couple years, and then came back, got hired back again at Mountain Bike Action, did that for another 10 years, then did road bike action, electric bike action, and mountain bike action at the same time. And then they 86 me in 2023. And that's when I came down here to KTM. There you go.
Crazy. Yeah, dude. The rate of growth and development of mountain biking from like 1993 to like 1998, right? Like in 1994, I bought my first Cannondale Super V. In 1998, people were racing on 8-inch travel and 10 sim ones. Like just 5 years. I mean, disc brakes, 8 inches of travel from, and then I want to hear more about like the motocross influence, but you had a lot of the road bike dudes also trying to develop mountain bikes, but not really knowing suspension. So a lot of those dudes were like really afraid of suspension. That's where like a lot of the URTs came from, was that mindset. Like,
yeah,
we don't want it to bob, we want it to pedal. And then you had like, Jeff Stever like, no, we want suspension.
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, it fundamentally didn't. The bicycle guys, they were bike geeks, and they grew up basically as from a road bike background, and they just had no. I mean, like that again. Famously, the Trek 8000 test that I did when it was just that stinking trampoline deathbed of a bicycle. I mean, it was a stack of elastomer donuts that they tested in Wisconsin, and they were good guys, they're smart guys, but for them, again, it was this East Coast and West Coast divide, and back then they were like testing their suspension on railroad ties. It's like woo. And I remember we took that thing out to the jump track over in Simi Valley where the Tomac would always go to. I mean, and we couldn't get no one wanted to even ride the bike because I hate to use I know I was, as an editor, I was always very cautious, the D word, dangerous. That thing was fucking dangerous, because it had no rebound whatsoever. So you'd hit a thing and just doing, and that invited me to have this huge, massive, because Trek rolled it out, the big suspension, blah 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 blah, and I likened it to a bucking bronco, and so that was like one of my best clever lines I ever used. Is like, if here's this bike, if you like it, great, but make sure you bring your chaps, because when you're riding on bumpy single track, it's going to be like a bucking bronco. Those guys in Waterloo didn't take so kindly to that because they thought they're Trek, this big bike company. So we had this huge roundtable meeting like in 1992 or something. And, they just couldn't believe, like, how can you say that about our bike? We're like, you guys, you just don't have no idea. And because you're going up against guys like Mert Lawwell, who, it was a master class of two-wheeled suspension technology,
Yeah.
And then
it must have been a really exciting time to be like at the forefront of media with all that development going on and a different bike coming through that looked totally different, had completely different spec every day of the week almost, especially with a lot of the SoCal frame builders and stuff like that were out there.
Yeah, it was. And, there was, and again, we tried to be nice, but there was so much stuff. Like, even I was talking to a guy the other day about mountain goat bikes, there's, it's this beautiful mountain goat bike, steel hardtail, beautiful, and I, what Ross was doing was Ross was a salsa. Sorry, Jeff Lindsay, at Mountain Goat. But one of the guys that worked for him did a suspension bike as his thesis for his design class in school. And they sent the bike down to us and had the green with the orange splatter paint. Beautiful. Uh-huh. That thing was like a fucking door hinge coming down a trail. I mean, the back end was just like stepping out. Really? I mean, it was so bad. It was dangerous.
Just flexy.
It was terrible. But again, that's what so many people don't understand back then. I mean, we would have to test stuff like 110 grand, titanium handlebars. I'm thinking like, and to test them, we had to come down Brown Mountain in Pasadena. We would aim to the ripple bumps to see, that's how we tested. And we joked about it. We're like, back then that was before anything was tested. People were just making stuff, and so it was super exciting, kind of quasi, crazy too, but yeah. And it was just, and it got it to where we are now, and that's why I'm always like the old man on the porch. The kids are just like, they take for granted that at some point bikes used to be horrible, and even sometimes dangerous. But
did you have anything break or fail on you when you were testing?
Yeah. Handlebars, seat posts, like, these guys were coming out with these like anodized seat posts. Well, I can't remember the company. They were in Glendale, California.
Yeah.
Just because they're, everyone's, like Bontrager's famous creed, it's like it can be expensive, it can be light, or it can be durable. Choose two, Yep. And a lot of guys back then were just going for color and lightness and price. And Yeah, it was bad. And then of course it was like the soft ride beam, I mean, those guys meant well too, but man, that thing was just like, then that was the whole thing with Tom Ritchie, it's like suspend the bike versus suspending the rider. That was a whole other huge philosophical debate,
Yeah.
and again, the letters we used to get, just for so many letters, suspension will never make it, and jump 30 years forward, and with gravel bikes, the same thing with disc brakes and gravel, and even road bikes. When I was editor of Road Bike Action, we get all these letters all the time. Disc brakes will never make it. Disc brakes will never be used by pros. Guess what? There's some things are inevitable, and suspension, disc brakes, those things are inevitable because they increase the performance, safety, and comfort. Like, why would you argue about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen that letter Eddie Merckx wrote regarding disc brakes and cycling?
No, I missed that.
Dude, it was crazy. He wrote like a open letter about disc brakes in cycling and how dangerous they are. That like if you nick your calf on a rotor, you're going to cut yourself. Stuff like that. Yeah. Like, I don't know, dude. Maybe road cycling and mountain biking are just divergent paths. It seems like a lot of the old school roadies didn't have a mind for mountain bikes. But you made a lot of friends at Trek back in the day. And then when I say made a lot of friends, they actually printed a shirt that said what?
Zap sucks.
Yeah, right.
It was after that bike, because every year they'd have this dealer meeting. Oh God, I just realized, because I lost my house in the fire, and I just remember, see, these things come to me. I lost that stinking t-shirt in the fire. Damn it. So in 92, we did the test, and in 93, they had the dealer meeting. And so one of these guys, his name's Dave, he was one of the sales guys, and he on his own made these shirts. It was like the classic red thing with a stripe through it. And it had this picture of like this like psycho Charlie Manson face figure, and it said Zap sucks on it. And he handed it out to all the sales guys. So at the sales meeting, they all walked around with these Zap sucks t-shirts because, how dare he, he offended us with this bike review. And then of course, when I came back to work at Trek, Dave Maurer was there. He was a super good guy. And he goes, hey, guess what? I made those shirts and we were slagging on you, but you know what? Because none of them had actually ridden the bike. He goes, but once I rode the bike, everyone's like, man, they were right. This thing is a pile, So anyways.
I got to get a Trek 9000.
And I also was hard on Trek because, I mean, again, in the same meeting we had at Anaheim, I've told this story a few times, but it's like, John Burke, the president of Trek then, as well, his dad was still there, but he's now the president of Trek, and I used to just cream Trek because everyone was going racing, and I'm a race guy, and everyone should be racing. And we sat there, and I remember John Burke telling me, why should we go racing? And to me, it was simple. I go, look, we go to the Big Bear Northern National when all, Park Pre's got a truck, and of course the famous Yeti box truck. Everyone's got trucks up there. And I said, if you're this huge bike maker, you sell all these Trek mountain bikes. If a Trek guy goes to Big Bear Northern National and he says, oh, look, Schwinn's got a truck, there's their family, and I go, as a Trek owner, he's like, where's my family? Like, who am I? I'm alone. I go, you should go racing because it's part of the community. Because that's been a deal. Racing is part of the community. So we had this huge fight, John Burke and I, about like racing and the value of racing and why you go racing. And I'm just like, dude, racing is everything, Yeah. And lo and behold, again, 30 years later, Trek's like they're one of the deepest investors in racing ever, And so when I went to work for them, there was no, there's a few kind of snide like remarks. It's like, oh, kind of funny thing that of all the people, they hired you to be in the, the brand man. I was the brand manager for Trek, for goodness sakes, and it's just like a crazy job for a guy who, just a decade earlier was just kind of like throwing him under the bus.
You don't get the R&D that you do when you go racing. I mean, nobody beats on their bikes harder than when you're trying to make it down a mountain,
And that's one of my, Richard Cunningham, who took my job at Mountain Bike Action when I left, and he created Mantis bicycles, brilliant designer, great guy. But him and this is something I take it personally. Him and like Jimmy Mack, who was another editor at Mountain Bike Action, they had this famous thing that people will say, there's like, oh, racing doesn't improve the breed. And I've always said, like, I respect Richard, his intelligence. He makes airplanes, he makes the Mantis bikes. But dude, how can you be that smart and say something so stupid? And I remember I would say that to certain people. Like I remember I asked Mert Level, hey Mert, people say racing doesn't improve the breed, and like Mert almost fainted. He's like, he couldn't even fathom any mind that would say race, because you can't improve, you can't get mountain bikes to where they are now from 1990 by riding on a stinking bike paths. It's not going to happen. And racing is fundamentally the one thing that improves the breed for motorcycles, for cars, for, for the British Bake Off that I watch with my girlfriend, I mean, it's like people are probably learning how to make better spice cakes because it's a fucking competition, racing improves the breed.
It's true.
The bike geek in me is just like, how else are you going to measure if a bike is better, faster, stronger, quicker than your time at the end of the run? That's one metric, right? That's the one metric that you can measure and just be totally scientific and empirical about it. And racing is scientific and empirical by nature. It's the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
that's the mad thing. Even today, though, that's the mad thing, isn't it? We're racing. Like, you've got guys, completely different riders, completely different riding styles on completely different machines. And, they're split by hundredths of a second after a full World Cup DH run. Everything's so capable these days, and it comes from racing.
Yeah. I mean, especially with downhill, when Common Cell showed up at the American races with the Sun bikes, and with Chasson and all, it's just like that. Like, I remember the Worlds in '94, man. I mean, it was so impressive just to see all these French guys. I mean, Max, I remember he's down at the finish line with walkie-talkies, and he's got guys all along the hill. And the American downhillers, we were clueless to how sophisticated Max and Common Cell was. What he brought to racing. I mean, it was like all of a sudden Formula One. It was so bitching, and Chasson came down that hill just killing everybody, and it was just, it was so impressive. And then the same thing with cross country, man. I mean, Max Common Cell, he'll be in the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame someday, I hope, because he really understood racing, not just as a marketing ploy, but I mean, philosophically, you could tell deep in his mind, racing. It was about racing.
Huh.
And still to this day, they're one of the biggest guys on the World Cup scene, certainly on the downhill side. And they're pushing racing all the time. And they're not the biggest brand in the world. We deal with them in the UK, but they're going toe to toe with the bigger brand, Specialized Trek, and they're taking the fight to them for a much smaller brand. It's great to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe we need to have a talk with Joe Breeze at the museum. Because they got one of his bikes. They have Francois Gachet's bike, but I don't think Max has been inducted.
No, we've trust me. I'm on the induction committee, for the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame. So it's been a process. Max is being a little French about it and a little difficult. Okay. So just like with Paul Turner at RockShox, who's like I liken him now to he's the new Howard Hughes of mountain bikes, because he became, he got all his money and everything, and then he's just kind of like he won't deal with anybody anymore. Max deals with us, but he's just not as for him, I don't know, whatever. But we're making strides to get Max in, because Max Common Cell absolutely deserves to be in the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame.
I didn't know you were on the induction committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I emailed Joe again the other day regarding Alex Morgan and Buffalo Composite Designs. Whether or not he gets inducted, at least one of his bikes, I think, should be in the museum.
Yeah, I agree.
He did so much stuff, dude. Can you talk about that just for a minute? Share the love about Alex Morgan and what he did. So I'm not the only one saying it.
No, I agree with you, because Alex Morgan, like I said, the BCD bikes, they could be easily voted the ugliest mountain bikes ever made in the world. Because they were just these totally rough, like drooping with carbon fiber and just heavy, clunky things. Nobody was doing what he was doing. And here's this tall, lanky guy, skinny guy, and he's kind of with his own stinking, New Mexico flair, if that's where he came from, and he was just thinking about things that no one else was thinking about. And it just, I look at those things, and just like, what are you doing? I couldn't understand it with, and bringing, everything that you see almost commonplace now with downhill bikes, with idler gears and motors and this, that, and the other, gearboxes. That's long ago forgotten about, and that's why, again, what you're doing, what I try to do is just like, it's just important to celebrate these guys, because that stuff's been around, and I hate to have like some new company come along, like, almost like, they probably do, and invent stuff, and people, and they get the notice for being like this pioneer, when guys like Alex Morgan were doing it so far all by themselves. He had no company, nothing. And it was just like, there's a guy named John Britton. He was a motorcycle designer from New Zealand. did one of the Britain motorcycle, beautiful, all by himself, made it in the back, like a shed in his house.
Mhm.
And it became this it's like one of the most sought after motorcycles now they raced it at Daytona, it won races. That was just up here in this guy's mind. It's a fabulously wonderful, beautiful mind. Alex Morgan's, to me, is the same thing. Even though Britain's bike is beautiful, Alex's bikes were horrid, but they were changing, they're evolving and just changing. It's an exciting thing to think about Alex Morgan.
It's so funny. He was literally baking carbon frames in a Kenmore oven.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was in his kitchen, but it was just like a standard oven, you know?
Yeah. Totally primitive.
Yeah, they weren't pretty. They were kind of Calfee-esque. You know, it was just tube and lug, but like he made his own tubes, which Craig Calfee doesn't even make his own tubes. He's buying them. But Alex was making his own tubes, and they were butted. And then big, huge, ugly lugs, internal, you know, gearboxes, 29ers before anybody did 29ers.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Well, easy on that. Easy on that. No, easy on that 29er before anyone. I mean,
29ers,
there's guys up.
29ers
There's guys up in,
bike.
Yeah. Okay.
I was at WTB in 98, 99, and 2000, so I was pretty early in 29ers. The very first year that 29ers showed up at Interbike, I think it was 99, and it was us and Wes Williams, and Steve Potts had his tie 29er with the Marzocchi that was hacked. And Wes had like two. He had a hardtail and he had a full suspension amp.
Yeah.
All
right. Thank you for mentioning Wes Williams, because really is, you know, I mean, Gary Fisher, because I remember when Gary Fisher would go to the annual training camps with Gary Fisher, and he started bringing that thing in, his 29er. And so again, I'm all about trying to highlight these small guys. Wes Williams up there in Crested Butte, you know, I mean, he's maybe a little bit bitter about it all, about how he doesn't get but that's kudos to you for mentioning Wes Williams, because I think he is one of the dudes that's really pushing the 29 thing before anyone was even listening.
Yeah. You ever read the book, The 100th Monkey?
No.
It's about, you know, sort of this community sort of mindset that drives an idea forward, that when you reach, you know, a certain level of people thinking the same way, kind of ideas blossom. And around that time, 1999, you had Wes Williams, the dudes at WTB, and Gary Fisher, and a few other people.
Kind of
all thinking about wheel sizes. But behind the scenes at WTB, they had all kinds of test mules and one-offs. Like Charlie had not just his bikes that were Cunningham labeled, but they had mullets, you know, 29er in front, 26 in the back. Mark had a steel bike. They were, at their garage sale, their open house, they were throwing away prototypes. Steel prototypes, Koski Trailmasters. Eric was there at that time. Not to talk about me, but anyway, when I mentioned Alex Morgan and 29, I just mean 29 downhill bike he had in 2007.
Yeah. Interesting.
Talk a little bit more about your early times at Mountain Bike Action. I see pictures of you like with the Yeti team, with John Parker on the C26. What was that? What was life like back in the early to mid 90s, hanging out with all those dudes?
Fabulous, magical.
Yeah.
I mean, John Parker, we got along really good. Again, motorcycle background, you know, and then they were right over there in Chatsworth, and with Chris Herding and FTW, Frank the Welder, you know, and this whole motley crew, Brett Hahn, just a good, solid group of mountain bike people. And again, that was another, if we weren't Tomac Bike Action, we also were labeled Yeti Bike Action, because there was a shitload of editorial and you know, we're magazine guys. So it was like me and Jody Weisel who hired me. You know, like we're kind of like, sometimes it was just the two of us literally putting out Motocross Action and Mountain Bike Action alone. So 12 issues each magazine. So when John Parker would come up with ideas or products and stuff, guess what? We're looking for content, just like now, people looking for content, you know, and he made it easy for us because, you know, he was just this crazy guy, and Jody put up with him, but he and I really got along well. And, they were local. So, you know, and he was into racing, and that's how I met John Parker. I was riding his Shogun Prairie Breaker at this race in Corona, and it just had this horrible steep downhill, and I was like, it had like a 120 stem on it, and I was like, you know, cross country guy, I knew nothing, and I literally just flipped my brains out and literally landed at the feet of John Parker, and that's how we first met. That was like in '87, maybe, I think, and from then on, that's what we always joke about. It's like, that's how our friendship was formed, because I'm just like crumpled up in the dirt, and just anyways. And then just to jump forward, but, again, just to speak to it, for my wedding present with my wife, Ronette, at the time, my wedding present was John Tomac C26. And so it's just great, I still got it. And luckily, Nick Martin's got it right now, formerly of the Pros Closet. And luckily he does have it, because again, when I lost my house last January in the fire, I had no time to get to the garage. I lost 18 bikes in the garage. And if that Yeti had been in the garage, it would have gone too. So, whew, but he, he just like John Parker, all those guys, just a good company. And then of course the famous Yeti box truck, the first one when Tomac came, he said, hey, a couple things, I want to try, I need my own mechanic and I need a box truck. And because Johnny understood that he came from the motocross world too, so it's like now all the guys back then, this was before they had the semis, they had box trucks. So, and Cockcroft will always give John Parker the same quarters, like the same corner space, right? But to get into the track, you had to walk past the Yeti truck every single day, every single year. It was brilliant. And they'd have this, all the tie-dye t-shirts up there for sale, and Jeff Ringley would be hanging out, and just good people, passionate people, dedicated people. No, no $1 million excesses of anything, and with Chris Herding, who was just a really thoughtful designer, and Frank the welder, and they were just doing, they did road bikes early on back then, and trials bikes, and yeah, it was just
mad to think Frank's still doing it. Frank's still there, right at the forefront. How I mean, he's been welding for seems like forever.
Yeah, now he's on the East Coast, with just welding, grinding, designing, and he is such a celebration. I mean, like those FTW stems back in the day before Answer Products bought them, just these Cobby welded aluminum stems, and then of course Answer bought them and became, the Manitou or the Answer stem, but huge, and I love it. I mean, that dude is so fucking rooted. He's deep. He's a simple guy, right? He's not trying to like sell out and get, bring in private equity money and all that other bullshit. He's just thinking they're doing what he loves to do. And at this age, it ain't easy to do what he's still doing, but real deal is Frank Waddleton.
Yeah. And he's done it for so many brands, brands. You just reel them off. It's like brands out of the Hall of Fame, isn't it? It's just, he's done it for everyone.
Yeah.
Have you been able to ride the C26?
I did back then.
Yeah.
It's pretty tender, that thing. I mean, the insert, for those chromoly lug, the steel lugs, they weren't too deep, and that's why of course Parker got out of it, because he just didn't want to deal with epoxy and all that stuff. And it was actually interesting when you hear Parker talk about that it was just too much waste product, and also at the same time Easton had just come out with the program tubing, the aluminum tubing. Mm-hmm. And so here's John Parker thinking, like, looking at all these Dixie cups full of resin and fucking bake times and this, that, and the other, and then he's thinking like, oh, actually, you know what, we can just go back to welding aluminum. That's what we do, we weld.
So I heard a rumor, I don't know if it's true. Is Frank Waddleton the reason that Yeti went to aluminum? Did Frank somehow talk to John and say, hey, dude, we need to do this?
No, I mean, it was between Frank, Chris Herding, John, and Chuck Texera, who was the guy at Easton, who is the brain behind program tubing that really, and then of course the Hyperlight handlebar, the taper light handlebar, then the Hyperlight handlebar. That was like my first version of suspension was that handlebar. That's how primitive it was back then, when you'd have a handlebar that instead of just a steel rod, that Chuck Texera designed it with Easton aluminum to actually, as the name implies, taper light. Hyperlight was the next level. It was like 130 gram handlebar, I think. But just that little teeny resonance, it would just, I mean, that back, because it was only rigid forks, right? So you go to Moab and just even like having, a tenth of an inch of not even flex, probably, that was like a huge deal. I mean, that was like the product of the year, was the taper light and then the Hyperlight. Chuck Texera, again, simple dude, loved bicycles, and it's all up here, a beautiful mind.
Yeah. So were you racing much back in the 90s?
Not much, but I would do Kamikaze every year. That'd be the big coming out party. Cross country, I would do cross, because we would use the races to test bikes. I mean, I have a photo of me riding the Kestrel MXZ at Mammoth one year. I raced it, the sport class, cross country. We would use the bikes to race, and it was good. We again, twofold. We could use a photo of me racing, and so then, hey, guess what? We just knocked a test bike photo out because we're using it here in a race. So,
Yeah.
And then back in 2000 at mountain bike, I started racing. I did like this I did the Norba series on the Yeti. I can't remember all the acronyms, but like the Fulcrum bike, the Tomac bike, the Yeti. What else did I do? I did like 4 nationals as like a factory rider using a factory bike, but just racing the vet class. And I won the Kamikaze, I won in Park City, and I won in Breckenridge. And I was kind of on my way to winning at Mount Snow at the finals, and I pulled over because it seemed like I was doing well. And I'm not just trying to bullshit, but I mean, I actually pulled over with nothing wrong because I passed. It was this horrible muddy mess, crazy conditions, but I passed like so many guys that ahead of me, and I'm thinking like I just didn't want to seem like a stinking cherry picker, even though I wasn't. I don't know. So, anyways, that was a good summer.
So you were winning a race and you pulled over?
I don't know if I was winning, but it seemed to me as many guys as I passed going down. Again, this is because I'm going to say I was a motorcycle guy, so I mean I was doing pretty good. But we came into this last wooded section, and Nelson Penn is my witness. He was my executive editor or the publisher of the magazine at Mountain Bike Magazine. And I pull over right in the woods, and he comes running over. He goes, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I started faking like it was something wrong with my bike. And I'm like, "Nothing wrong. I just didn't want to be the guy that could conceivably take a title or a win away from someone else. I just felt like I'm the editor. I get these free bikes. It was like just too much goodness in my life to deprive someone." And so anyways,
yeah,
I feel the same. That's why I ride the brakes all the time, every time, every race, right. Chuck doesn't have the same problem.
I wish. Was that a cross country or a downhill race?
No, it was downhill. I was only racing downhill. I had the fitness on it cross. There is no way in the world I would ever do that. So I was just just kind of relying on my motocross abilities and motorcycle racing, because that's like, what Sean Palmer did. Sean Palmer just brought it to downhill, and none of the except for Johnny O'Mara. He's probably the only guy who took his motocross skills and used it specifically for cross country, because he had nothing to do with downhill at all. But no, it was just downhill. And like I had Monkey was my mechanic on the Yeti at Mammoth. That was awesome.
When you say you rode the Fulcrum, was that Cannondale?
Yeah.
So I know a guy that was working at Cannondale. I'm not going to mention his name, but he claims that the Cannondale Fulcrum design was basically VPP before VPP. Do you know anything about that?
No, you talk to Mario Galasso, who was one of the designers, and he went on to Fox after Cannondale.
Okay.
That thing, actually, it wasn't. I take it back. It wasn't the Fulcrum, because the Fulcrum was a jack shaft bike. It wasn't the Fulcrum. It was. I'm losing track. Sorry. Yeah. It was a factory Cannondale downhill bike, though. The Fulcrum, that thing was. I mean, again, talk about a beautiful mind who come up with that sneaking nightmare scenario of the jack shaft and the chains and oh my goodness, that was a beautiful bike.
But dude, they're doing it today. I mean, Dave Wiggle and Pivot. I mean, DW ain't VPP, but multi-link with a jack shaft is not too far removed, right?
Yeah.
So
in a much simpler form.
Yeah, it's a heck of a lot cleaner. I mean, it's almost 30 years newer, but
that's like the bout for Nouveau Riche, right? That was like 90, 96, 97, the Nouveau Riche, that jack shaft dual drive.
Yeah.
That was a cool bike.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to kind of why we do what we do is people think all this stuff is new. It's like, no, dude, Cannondale, when did the Fulcrum come out? 98, 99 was doing that back then.
Yeah.
So, but, like I said, I came with a list of notes and they're all wrong. So kind of starting from scratch. So after MBA, you went to bicycling and started bicycling.
It was called mountain bike. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wrote down bike mag. And how long were you at mountain bike?
10 years. I got hired in June of 93. And then I got fired in August of 2003 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And then went to Trek after
went to Trek for like 4 years. Yeah. And then I loved Wisconsin, but that job, and I'm not a business guy. And I understand brand messaging. I mean, that's the guy, Dick Moran, who hired me. I think he saw in me, I understood branding because I'm between the magazines, and I understand, I have a sense of what a brand is and brand stories and storytelling. So literally after my first year, we had to get new business cards. And I was just like this whole brand manager thing. I was like, I'm not a fucking brand manager. I don't want to be a brand manager. I'm a storyteller. So I had my business card changed. It said storyteller instead of brand manager. Cause it just like, I'm not a business guy, that's not my deal. So yeah. But they did some good things. That's the one they first got into, like the session with Andrew Chandro, was super early on. And we had the shop right there inside Trek where these guys, again, just bitchin' designers, just making aluminum, the different frame versions of the session, that early session that they were doing was super cool.
They brought on some dude for when they finally really started taking suspension seriously was around that time. I thought they brought on some dude from motocross.
They did. Well, that's another funny story. We hired Mike McAndrews. He was a former Kawasaki mechanic for Jeff Ward. And I knew Mick, I call him Mick, and Mick worked at RockShox, super smart guy, super nice guy. And we hired Mike McAndrews. And I was doing newsletters back then for Trek. And so I did a newsletter announcing Mike McAndrews is coming to Trek to be our suspension guy. And I put pictures of him, Jeff Ward, and I'm like flying the McAndrews flag. Literally, like that. I can't remember exactly. Like, say if that thing went out on Monday, by like the next week, I'm like, so when does McAndrews start? Where's Mick? I'm like, I can talk about motorcycle stories all day long with somebody, instead of bicycles. And again, Dick Moran's my kind of joyful way, not too, kind of bawled me out. He goes, thanks for you doing that. They went and hired Specialized. Typical Mike Sinyard, right? Do anything to rule. They literally hired him away from us. And I can understand it because like the wife comes to Wisconsin from McAndrew's wife. He's like, like snowy and cold versus living in, where they lived in Santa Cruz already. So it's like, why would we move to Wisconsin? So we lost McAndrews, which is a drag. But then later on, a couple years later, they hired Jose Gonzalez. And so It was Jose Gonzalez who did so much for Trek suspension. Again, a motorcycle guy, and better yet, I call him a Mexican, although he's Spanish. So I like guys like, some of those guys back there, I ribbed the product managers because they're like, look at the bike we came out with. I'm like, screw you, it was a fucking Mexican that put Trek on the suspension map, not you stinking cheese-eating Wisconsinites,
That's who I was thinking of. What was his background? He was out of motocross.
He was a racer, but then he was also, like Mike McAndrews, a factory mechanic for Kawasaki, and his sister, more famously, Mercedes Gonzalez, was a multi-time national champion motorcycles. And then GT hired her when she quit racing motorcycles, and she became a downhill rider. And I think she got a bronze medal at the Worlds, and I can't remember which year, and which maybe Belgium, Keurtsarten maybe. I can't remember. So, anyways, again, this interesting cycle of motorcycle and bicycle, the nexus between the two. So Jose Gonzalez, super, super nicest guy in the world. And he's up in Santa Clarita Valley. He might have moved, but he was like making trails up there in the Santa Clarita Valley and just real mountain bike enthusiast, super cool. Yeah. And he put Trek on that winning trajectory with there's designers, engineers too, but he really understood suspension as a motorcycle guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when they started really taking it seriously. It seemed like when they came out with the session and the fuel. Yeah. And all that. Prior to that, Trek suspension bikes. I was a GT dealer for the longest time, so we kind of looked down, back in 98, 99 when GT was at its apogee. I get apogee and perigee. But we looked down on all the URTs and stuff back in the day. But I read another review you did with Specialized and made a lot of friends with their brain shock.
Oh yeah, that's the one that kind of got me fired from mountain bike.
Right.
Because those guys that Specialized, not much of a humor, and there were some people there that didn't believe in free ideas or opinion or anything like that. And yeah, one of the drags is that is like it's a long story. But anyways, yeah, the brain shock, they came out and the whole thing was supposed to be like, it's smarter than you and smarter than a regular shock. And it was. It was mounted on the back on the seat stay. The problem was, because the ad campaigns, see, that was to me the nexus between the two. It's like the ad campaign and came out and said it was the holy grail of suspension. And I'm like, well, it's got to be pretty good. The Holy Grail. I mean, the Holy Grail, again, in religious tones, right? That's a pretty big deal. It's the Holy Grail. I'm pretty sure that's what the ad campaign said. But it was something so typically specialized, overplaying themselves. And we rode that bike, tested that bike. Guess what? Wasn't that good. I mean, it's like that back end was heavy and it just like clunked around, and it may have been thinking for you, but it didn't think fast enough. So it's like it would hit a bump, and then like the brain shock would start thinking about it, like, kind of like, maybe should I open up and maybe make it, and by that time you're already hitting the next bump, and it's a stinking hardtail. Like, it didn't work good. So anyways, that between me fighting with this guy that Rodale hired to be the overall managing editor guy, who was a complete idiot, that Specialized ad did me no favors, because when Specialized calls and says, which is what happened, we're going to cancel ads because of, and to the credit of Roland Hines, who was the publisher at Mountain Bike Action, he heard that, he got those phone calls in the early 90s all the time. And he and I didn't always see eye to eye on everything in life. He was real conservative. I'm not, but that dude always had our back. And that's what, gave us maybe sometimes even a little too much provocative ideas, because, but we had some pretty heated meetings at Mountain Bike Action with the ad guys and Roland, because back then, again, we were riding bikes that could be ridden, or how they could be ridden. And we got in a lot of trouble back in the day. So fast forward, here it is again. And then when I went to Mountain Bike Action after all those years, they found out at Specialized that Mountain Bike Action was going to hire me. And fucking people from Specialized called Roland Hines and said, don't hire Zap, blah, blah, blah. And the thing that pissed me off is that one of the guys that was an advocate of not hiring Zap because he doesn't like Specialized, or, he's got this trail of, bad feelings about Specialized, was a guy that I had hired earlier at Mountain Bike Magazine. So here's a former editor who should be, as any editor should be, a proponent of free speech and free thinking and, open communication, trying to get me stinking fired because, he's a, corporate lapdog type guy. Anyways, not like I'm holding a grudge.
No, dude, I appreciate it.
But to Roland Hines, he kept me on, and I still did. And I said, look, the best way I'm going to prove to Specialized and anyone else, I'm going to test a Specialized bike, and I'm going to be just as I always am, fair, objective, and honest, because that's what it's about. It's like you're just being honest. You're not throwing them under the rug because you hate them. That's not what we were ever doing. We were just being honest in our interpretation of riding bicycles.
No, I appreciate it. As a consumer, back then, I mean, we're always kind of wondering how much is the marketing dollars driving the editorial, right? So in your case, it sounds like not that much, which that's good.
And that was my argument. It's like when all these guys would call up and complain, like even some of the first time around, the guys at Trek were, because they pulled their ads. I mean, Mountain Bike Action, we had so many ad campaigns that were taken away because of things we said. And I always thought, if the guy who's making a decision, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't agree with that test, what he said. I'm going to pull our ads. What do they think when they're buying? They read like Consumer Reports about a refrigerator. And the refrigerator is like, and if the guy's doesn't want to say anything bad, he goes on glowing about the refrigerator. And then you, as a consumer, well, look what they said. I'm going to go buy that. Ends up being a pile. Who's the wrong person in this interaction, right? Yeah. It's the person who wasn't being honest. And that was the thing. Rodale back then, I mean, I brought that. I mean, it was like a big deal because, as you can maybe tell now, I get excited. I cuss too much. But it's about being honest and giving information. And like at Rodale, they were just like, everything was just like, they wouldn't test bikes. They said, let's not test a bike if we don't like it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, it's like covering up that we're here as a consumer guide. We should be talking about every bike, good or bad. And there was people there that didn't want us to test bikes if we thought it was going to get a bad review. I'm like, look, I'm not going to go and get a bike, ride it, find out it's bad, and then decide I'm not going to test it. It's like we test everything, because that's what we should be doing, testing product. And we should be honest. And that's what Jody Weisel, again, who taught me from Motocross Action, the advertiser and the company owners, that's not the customer for us, for a magazine. It's the readers that are the customer, because they're relying on us to be honest about what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And again, we weren't computer scientists. We weren't pro riders or anything like that, but we were just lay guys riding bikes a lot. We rode a lot of bikes all the time. And so we had a structure of, history of like, right, oh, this compares to that, or you know what I mean? We would know what it compared to stuff because we had this foundation of knowledge just built on riding so many bikes. And it's just about being honest, not about being mean.
Even today, though, that whole advertising thing is still massive. The more you spend on advertising, the more reviews you get and stuff like that. But the biggest thing these days, you get far less people that are super excited about the product and knowledgeable as you are. And there are some brands, magazine brands that you read articles they put out and clearly they're not cyclists. They're just general media people. The terminology they use is wrong. The quotes that they're using are wrong. And it's lazy, the lazy media these days.
And that's my critique of like what the internet has brought, the democratization of journalism and media. It's like, I welcome that. That's great. But at the same time, let's be sure we try to distinguish between you own 5 bike shops. I'd rather take information from you about a bike or products than just some guy who's like an ambassador, God forbid, for some company, or just some, Johnny come lately who's created his own magazine on, digital magazine, who knows nothing, So it's been scary. What's that?
Kidding. I said I'm offended.
Yeah, you should be, because you're exactly who we're talking about. But people would always say,
Chuck? Next T-shirt, who's Chuck?
Yeah. I mean, my counter argument was always like, people would say, oh, it's a negative test. I'm like, it's not a negative test, it's a critical test. And to me, it may be wordplay, but there's a distinction between being negative and being critical. It was our job as journalists to be critical, because that's what people are expecting. Again, if I went to a movie like, some movie where like Avatar, that movie was horrible, and I went to go see it because a friend of mine thought it was the greatest movie in the world. And I'm like, wow, I should have, if I had read a review and they said nothing but glowing things about it because of that producer guy, I would be pissed off that I spent $12 on a ticket because the, reviewer, the reviewer could have his say about it, his opinion about it, but you're not being negative. You're just being critical, which is the place every editorial person should be if you're talking about product. Be critical. You can be positive about it, but you're being critical, because critical thinking is what advances the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's what people are, spending their money on and making buying decisions based on, right?
Yeah.
And the value of product these days is so high that you've got to have that critical information, whether the brand likes it or not. The consumer needs to know the details when you're looking at $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 bikes.
Yeah, especially now, man. Back then we were talking about $900 bikes, $1,200 bikes, and now, oh God, it's crazy.
So you were at MBA up until 91. Went to bicycling. When did you come back to MBA?
2003 or 4, whatever. Went after sorry. I was at Trek in 2003. I was there for like 4 years, so like 2008, I guess, something like that. And then I was there since then until 2023, and then I got the boot.
And you were running mountain bike action, road bike action,
and electric bike action.
Electric bike action. Tell me about the first couple of episodes that you guys did at road bike action.
Well, we did road bike action actually back in 1993, the very first time we did road bike action. And we had Toby Henderson on a team IME, which is an East Coast professional road team. We had this DeRosa road bike, beautiful, like Ugo DeRosa, right? Like a legendary Italian frame builder.
Yeah.
And of course, we're mountain bike action, right? So instead of like treating the bike with kit gloves and, doing some corner shot, we took Toby Henderson, former BMX national champion and downhiller, up to Big Bear. We found a pitch of the road that had a jump, like a jump to it. And here, the first cover of the original road bike action in 1993, Toby Henderson getting air on his stinking DeRosa road bike. And that was Roland's idea. Roland, as conservative as Roland was, he loved being like just sticking people, because he knew notoriety is going to do us well. Sometimes did us ill, but he wanted to be not just a regular road bike magazine. He wanted to be road bike action from the guys at Mountain Bike Action. And then we got that road bike back and we sent it back, and those guys, we got a phone call, and unbeknownst to us, the head tube of that thing was splayed out from Toby jumping the thing so much. And it's just like, the level of disrespect to that DeRosa, I sit back now and laugh at it, but it should have been embarrassing. It would be embarrassing, because no DeRosa should have been treated like that. And that's where we're so full of ourselves, that would be one instance when we kind of like lost track of like us being sensible about what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
You're talking about Toby. You're talking about Toby. I was tearing through a box the other day and I came across a Custer rear shock, which I've lost for about a year because I got one of the THS1s last year, one of the first 25 that they did, but I couldn't find the shock anywhere. It came separately from Japan, and finally last week mated the two back together again.
Oh, there you go.
Cool. It's a cool bike built by Bose.
Yeah, so for all the crossover from motocross, Brent brought like off-road race truck technology.
Yeah.
I don't really know Cooster, but I assume they were off-road race trucks. Suspension?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
About Cooster.
Cooster shocks, were they off-road race truck shocks? They weren't really native to bikes.
I don't remember. I've spoken to Brent about it, but I can't remember. Obviously, the big thing with them is Kernert, which is Charlie Kernert, which comes from the Baja. But yeah, Custer predated that, but I can't remember the story behind it. We'll have to ask Brent.
The other one he used, on the Leaf Spring bike, he had various dampers, but he had Sway Away, which I think again was an off-road race truck shock, and he would put Sway Away dampers on downhill bikes. So while we had the motocross influence, Brent brought, Baja technology.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I never really gave it much thought because he was a truck guy for sure. And it's interesting. I mean, and his suspension designs, like you're speaking of the Leaf Spring, crazily advanced, and yet in an entirely different column than the motocross stuff.
Yeah.
Brent's just, again, he's like Frank the Welder, just, dirty, grimy hands. It's like, you don't even know where those hands have been, when you shake them, and you're just, but it's in real stuff. And he was just a humble guy, but just crazy I don't know how the guy ever made money, because everything he did was so designed, and the hours of workmanship that went into everything. Woof, crazy.
Just shit tons of street smarts and knowledge from years of doing it. When you look at his bikes like closely, you're like, why did he do that? And it's like he built shit to last.
Yeah.
And I get my knuckles wrapped every time I talk or post about the Leaf Spring bike, because I don't know shit about Volkswagen Bug suspension, and everybody always like tells me I don't know shit. And like, yeah, you're right, I don't know shit. But okay, it's a Leaf Spring, but Volkswagen Bugs used a torsion bar. Any idea what? Because Brent told us in the podcast he took the Leaf Spring off of his Bug. Any idea?
Oh, yeah, I'm not a car. I've never been a car guy, so I have no idea.
People always tell me I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't know shit about Volkswagen Bugs. But anyway, he's another one like Brent Foes, Frank Waddleton, Steve Potts. Like dudes that have been building hands-on for like 40 years. I want to have Steve Potts on too. He's not really known for downhill, but back in 1978, everything was a downhill bike. That's when he started building, and I can like those three guys have been building hands-on themselves for 30, 40 years. So I want to have Steve on too, just to encapsulate as much of his knowledge and who he is.
Just for the sake of it, two things. Steve Potts, A, should be on because he's just a good human being, but B, he also has a motorcycle background. He raced he raced dirt track. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he raced on Bull Taco.
Yes, he did.
Which I don't know anything about Bull Taco. I think they're an Italian brand.
Spanish.
Are they? Yeah.
Yeah. No longer in existence.
He's like my adopted grandpa. I worked with him in '99, back when he was at WTB.
Yeah.
And he met my wife at the North American Hand-Built Bike Show in 2012. And put his arm around her and sat her down for like a half hour. And when she left his booth, she's like, yeah, you can have the bike. So now I've got a Steve Potts hardtail. I'm keeping it forever. He's really good.
A good person.
Have you spent much time with Jeff Stiebert?
Yeah. I just got him inducted in the Hall of Fame that night.
Yeah. Which is where I met you in person. I had Greg Menard's 2003 race bike with me that night.
Yeah.
There should really be a proper Intense M1 in the museum. And
they're making that happen.
Good. Yeah, one of them. I don't know if it needs to be Sean Palmer's or whose, but somebody should have one of their bikes in the museum. Kind of as we talked about previously, you've been so immersed in mountain biking and mountain bike culture, and there's so many pictures of you with like all the big names in the industry. What are like your fondest memories or craziest experiences? I mean, you've been so immersed and you've lived through it all. What kind of comes to mind?
Every day is a memory, absolutely, for me, because I just still consider myself the luckiest person to live a life. I grew up racing BMX and then motorcycles, and to now still be talking to you guys, being at the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame. Roger DeCoster, the greatest motocross race. He works across the street in the race shop here at KTM. So I'm just, I love talking about the stuff. I love living the life, and so it's hard. So there's a ton of great memories, but I think the one that encapsulates everything to me as a mountain biker, Durango 1990 World Championships. That was, it's an overstated cliche, but it was the Woodstock. It was the everything of mountain biking back then. Frishy shows up and who does this guy think he is, challenging our Ned Overend on Ned Overend's trails? It's like, and I shot all these great photos. Just like I sat on the dirt, and Ned pushing his bike up the steepest climb, and here's Frishy shouldering his bike like a cyclocross guy, and Tomac on the Yeti, and Julie Furtado, the fabulous Julie Furtado, the famous post-race party that was just a debauchery. You wouldn't, oh my God, crazy. But that's when UCI gave us formal recognition. It's when the Europeans first came over, just with some of the ugliest, gaudiest dress in the world. Philippe Parakis was there on the ATZ, probably could have beaten HB for a title, but he broke his wrist the day before practicing. Greg Herbald, one of the biggest celebrations of mountain bike history to me. That was, I went to World Championships every year. They were all great, but man, and like I always say, it wasn't better back then, because all of us old guys in the porch always, try to say I was so much better back then. It was just different back then. And I just wish that there was more mountain bike events today that kind of speak to that same sort of ethos that Durango Worlds did. And maybe Durango Worlds, they're going to come back to Durango. Was it 2030? I think it is. They just announced last year or earlier this year that they're going to give like the 50th anniversary or 45th, whatever, I don't do numbers. They're going to do Durango World Championships again. So up at Purgatory, that was a great event. Lisa Muick, Ned Overend. We're so young and dumb and just trying to, be mountain bikers. And we didn't know what it was. Rock Shocks was in there. They Rock Shocks rented this apartment. The floor was covered with oil because they were putting forks on bikes so quickly and taking them apart. It was just a mad scene of so much innovation, just ready to burst out. And it did after that event.
Yeah. Durango, who's doing it right? The Brits with Malverns, right? They're doing the race, they're doing the classic, they're doing the vintage bike show, and then every night is a freaking rave. They have Dottie spinning records, right?
Yeah, it's a pilgrimage every year. Yeah, we're there for 4 days.
Wow, nice.
No showers, raving.
Yeah,
nice.
I was talking to, what's Nigel's last name?
Page.
I was talking to the dude that runs Malverns.
Oh, Cy Payton.
Cy Payton, I'm sorry. I was talking to him about Sea Otter, thinking Sea Otter was pretty rad. He's like, yeah, but do you have a DJ and where are the beers? I'm like, okay. But yeah, the Brits have taken the reins on the whole party scene at the mountain bike races.
Good for them.
Yeah, we really got to bring that back. Sea Otter is good. Sea Otter is super good, but we don't have the party atmosphere like they do.
There's no sense of community at Sea Otter.
Yeah.
No.
Unfortunately.
But it's still good.
Not sure Laguna Seca would allow a full rave in the middle of the track.
You can't be over 93 dB or you piss off the homeowners.
Face first on some bobsleighs through the corkscrew.
So
there you go.
So Zap, what are you doing now?
I'm walking across the way because my computer's ready to die. I'm waiting for A1, the opening round of the Supercross, because Eli Tomac's going to show up on a KTM, so that's got a big deal. But I'm just living life. Just trying to keep talking about old stuff. I got my website, zapbikemedia.com, and I just like I told you, I just try to do stories. I'm working on stories with racers for just on my own. It's like no one hires me. I want to tell the stories about people with motorcycles and bicycles that are just to me worthy of telling, because I want the stories to be known. You know.
And you're writing articles for what is Flyer
Mountain Flyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just call me. I just do like a one bike a month. Or sorry, they do 3 issues a year. I just do one bike for each issue. I just interviewed Brent Trimble, actually, who is another brilliant mind. He's going to be in the next issue, but I just did an interview with him 2 nights ago. He's off in Hawaii, and Trimble was doing carbon fiber before anybody. So again, I found him because again, thankfully for myself that I'm old enough to know Brent Trimble. And when the guys at Mountain Flyer are saying, who we want to do next? I'm like, Brent Trimble, because carbon fiber is so ubiquitous. Now we don't even think about it. But back then in 1985, are you kidding me? And it's, the X frame was like this crazy, massive like sailboat sized boom tube, and anyone who doesn't know what Trimble is, look up Trimble bicycles, and it's just like, you're like, that was a bicycle. And Jake Watson actually raced downhill we talked about that, right? So I'm super excited about telling that story. It was a great interview, and he's telling me about these stories. I'm like, no way, really? That excitement I still feel is what I'm trying to do in my stories.
Is he still making bikes?
Yes.
Because we're friends on Facebook. He doesn't know who I am, but I see his bikes with like modern forks on them. So I don't know if he's building one-offs or if he's actually producing them.
Yeah, he is in Hawaii. And I said, well, that's great. Do you have a website? He goes, no, I don't want to. He's like, he's just still Trimble doing it his own way and for a small amount of customers, I guess. So maybe you should, hit him up on that and see if he'll do a bike. But, again, just a brilliant guy. He was up in Alaska and he made this. I'm like, what gave you the idea of doing that? And it was about the, absorption. He was already had his own mind about how carbon fiber would work. And it beat. That was 5 years before Yeti joined carbon tube, because that was the very first carbon bikes were just whether it was the Specialized Epic or the Trek. It was just carbon tubes, put into either aluminum or steel lugs. But his was like the very first monocoque casted, molded carbon frame probably in history, I'm going to say, without knowing more.
He was one of the founders of Kestrel?
Not a founder, but he was like he wasn't the founder, but Kestrel existed, but he was the guy who, for the Kestrel 4000 road bike, which is the bike that put Kestrel on the map, he's the guy who did that bike. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
We're a Rubicon fan, aren't we, Chuck?
Yeah.
We like a Rubicon.
Yeah, I need to get another Rubicon. I've had maybe 9 Kestrel Rubicons. I've lost count. But yeah, I got one of Kurt Stockton's very early 1996 bikes that was built with all the Ringley and Kuka and Gura hydraulic brakes. And I ended up building that thing up with a Monster T, 2 Reese shocks. I broke like 6 or 7 of them. So I was making trips down to Watsonville, getting custom Rubicons made. That bike is crazy, and I've ended up owning probably 10 of them in total. So,
and just quickly, the predecessor to that was the Kestrel, the Nitro, it showed up at the Long Beach Bike Show that Bontrager and Paul Tur, the very first rock shock on it. And it's so funny. I mean, at Mountain Bike Action, we had like 3 pictures of that thing because it's like we shot photos of it, we put it on the cover actually, but when I would try to do stories later about it, I'm just like, where are the photos of this thing? We didn't even, I don't know. I mean, in later years, we would have poured over that thing, and that bike from Kestrel was just, it wasn't a working bike, but still 1988 Long Beach Bike Show. Here's this full suspension bike, just out of carbon fiber. I was like, there's some bitching stuff going on there in Watsonville.
Yeah, Keith posted some pictures of the Nitro and then the hand-drawn drawings of before it was even called RockShox, before it was even RS1. He had his hand.
Yeah, it was like Cycle Sport or something like that.
Yeah, like Cycle Sport Technology or whatever.
Yeah.
People don't think of Keith Bontrager as a suspension guy, but he had the Leaf Spring bike. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
a different leaf spring. It's instead of a main pivot, it was fiberglass pivot, whatever. So Keith has been doing stuff behind the scenes that not everybody knows about. But
And also a motorcycle guy.
was he?
Yeah,
Okay.
he worked. That's where Paul Turner and him came from Honda together.
That is like the main theme. Other than Brent Foes, everybody came from motocross, I think.
Yeah, and Bontrager was actually a team mechanic for Jim Turner, who was Paul's older brother when Jim Turner was the Canadian national champion in 1979 for
Yeah.
racing for the Fox factory. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like this, it's all.
So
itching.
you're living the dream of being in both motocross and mountain bikes.
Without a doubt. Without
Yeah.
a doubt. Like I tell my daughter, I go, hey, at some point, whenever you see a book like, written by someone who says, I'm the luckiest person alive, they're fucking lying, because guess what? I'm the luckiest person alive, because I got my daughter, and I get to see Roger DeCoster, and I get to talk to you guys and talk about mountain bikes, and Jeff Steber's a friend of mine. And, it's for anyone. I never could have imagined this. And it all started largely when I went to see On Any Sunday in 1971. That movie changed my life. And from that point forward, I just wanted to be a motorcycle guy, bicycles, everything. Absolutely. I'm just every day I wake up just like, awesome, great life.
Okay.
It's such a unique couple of industries, isn't it? Motorcycles and bicycles. There's nothing else that's like it out there industry wise. I don't think. Not even the automotive.
There's a t-shirt right there. There's no one else because that's why I feel so fortunate and lucky, I think, because these two industries together, the passion and just the engineering and everything, it's just because we're into it, because there's something about two wheels with a chain and a handlebar or something that drives us mad,
Yeah.
And it's so great.
It's happy and healthy. I mean, we're having a good time, but it's super freaking healthy. We're out there working our butts off. I come home, sore in a good way.
But even that, just more importantly, when you say healthy up here and in here, not just car, and that's the thing. And that's what drives me. It's just that two-wheeled happiness. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
It's meditation, dude. I mean, I live here in Walnut Creek, so we got Mount Diablo, like right here. Mount Diablo to me is like a member of the family. I lived at the base of Mount Diablo all through high school and shit. And, climbing Mount Diablo, especially in the winter in the fog when you can't see anything, and all you're doing is pedaling and breathing. It's meditation. There's nothing more meditative. And then on the downhill, you haul ass and hit jumps and skid on rocks, and it's super fun. There's nothing better. And probably the majority of my friends just think I'm a weirdo, but dude, there's nothing better. It's super fun. It's super healthy. So, Zach, thank you so much.
Lucky for us.
I know we're kind of
appreciate it.
We didn't go by our calendar today, but I'm glad we made it happen. It's great having you on. Anything I can do to help you in whatever ventures you have, I'm here for it, and really appreciate you and all you've done for the sport. You're awesome.
It's been honestly, it's been an honor to be a loudmouth storyteller for bicycles and motorcycles. And the best thing you can do is hug your daughter. Daughters rule. So
I'm getting her out. She's getting a new bike for Christmas. She doesn't know. She's been riding hand-me-down, so she's getting a 29er for Christmas with she's really into her favorite stuffed animal is a monkey. So it's full monkey and banana themed.
Cool.
Carbon fiber 29er. It's going to be rad.
I thank you very much for the opportunity. Again, it's been a wonderful life, and the fact that anyone even is interested to know anything about it, I'm lucky for that. So I appreciate you guys.
I appreciate you taking the time.